In the early hours of October 21st, an unusual stillness settled over Ray Mill House, Queen Camilla's private estate in the Wiltshire countryside. Through the thick, silver mist, a convoy of unmarked black cars made its way down the tree-lined road toward the residence. Headlights swept across ivy-clad stone walls, glinting briefly against the royal standard that hung at half-mast. From the shadows emerged royal guards in dark uniforms, moving swiftly and in complete silence. Each step was deliberate, each gesture rehearsed with precision. No words were spoken, only subtle exchanges of glances. A covert inspection was underway, right inside the property of the Queen of England. What could possibly drive the British royal family, known for their restraint and adherence to protocol, to authorize a midnight operation like this? Why would Queen Camilla, the second most powerful figure in the monarchy, become the center of such an extraordinary act? And more alarmingly, why was a piece of jewelry belonging to Princess Catherine, one deeply tied to Princess Diana's legacy and missing for weeks, suddenly discovered within the Queen's own residence? Buckingham Palace chose silence. No statement, no explanation, only whispers, leaks, and mounting speculation. Royal commentators called it an unprecedented internal crisis under King Charles III. For in a world where every gesture is calculated, silence itself often signals the coming of a storm. This was no ordinary case of missing jewelry. It marked the beginning of a chain of events that could shake the trust built within the ancient walls of the British monarchy. To understand how this storm began, we must turn back the clock to the morning Princess Catherine realized her treasured heirloom had vanished. It was September 14th. Kensington Palace was bustling with preparations for the season's biggest charity gala, an event where Princess Catherine and Prince William were set to raise funds for children battling cancer. Behind the scenes, staff were fine-tuning every last detail. The wardrobe team laid out Catherine's evening gown and the iconic pieces of jewelry that completed her timeless look. Everything appeared flawless, until a small discovery sent shockwaves through the palace. The diamond set, a necklace, earrings, and ring crafted from South African diamonds, was gone. It wasn't just any jewelry. It once belonged to Princess Diana, William's late mother. After William's wedding, Queen Elizabeth II personally entrusted the set to Catherine as a symbol of maternal love and royal continuity. Whenever Catherine wore it, the public saw more than sparkle. They saw echoes of Diana's grace and compassion. That's why its disappearance struck far deeper than material loss. It touched the very core of royal memory and pride. Catherine was the first to notice. When her assistant brought the jewelry case for her to choose accessories for the evening, it was empty. No signs of tampering, no forced entry. The key was untouched, and palace security recorded no movement in her private quarters the night before. For a moment, she froze. Her face turned pale as she brushed her trembling hand over the velvet lining. It wasn't about the diamonds. It was about what they represented, a connection between generations, between Diana's legacy and her own role in the royal story. Prince William was informed immediately. He ordered a full review of the surveillance system and access logs. Yet everything appeared normal. No evidence of theft, no suspicious activity. The missing jewelry had become a mystery with no clues. Catherine chose silence. She didn't want the media to catch wind of it. If this story leaks, all eyes will once again turn to Diana's legacy, and the rumors will never stop. A close confidant recalled her saying, despite her anxiety, the princess maintained her composure in public, attending engagements with her usual grace. But inside Kensington Palace, the tension was palpable. Every look, every movement seemed careful, too careful. A quiet internal investigation began. Royal security teams worked around the clock, reviewing footage frame by frame, detail by detail. One wardrobe staff member reported something odd. 2 days before the gala, someone had requested access to Catherine's dressing room, claiming they needed to test how the jewelry reflected stage lighting, but that individual wasn't part of the event's technical crew, and their records had since been wiped from the palace guest registry. Rumors began to leak. Several tabloids suggested that someone had deliberately gained access to Princess Catherine's private quarters, and that an insider might have helped conceal the act. Half-true, half-fabricated stories began circulating online, stirring both curiosity and outrage among the public. How could something so valuable disappear from within the heart of the monarchy, one of the most secure places in all of Britain? While the security team struggled to find answers, the royal family found itself in a difficult position. King Charles III was said to have summoned his closest advisors for a private discussion on how to handle the matter. If this isn't resolved properly, it will fracture public trust, a Buckingham Palace source revealed. Yet what caught everyone off guard was Queen Camilla's reaction. According to one palace employee, she barely mentioned the incident and dismissed it coldly as a small matter that shouldn't be exaggerated. Her calmness only deepened the suspicion, especially since, in recent months, there had been a noticeable distance between the two most powerful women in the royal family. Royal commentators warned that this missing jewelry might be the beginning of a storm inside the palace, not merely because of its monetary value, but because it evoked the haunting memory of Diana, the woman whose name still lingers like a ghost in every relationship between Charles, Camilla, and Catherine. The missing jewels were an invisible reminder that Diana's legacy had never truly vanished, even more than 2 decades after her death. As the media began to question the palace's silence, a startling new piece of information surfaced. An insider claimed that an item of similar description had recently been seen at an unexpected location, Ray Mill House, Queen Camilla's private residence in Wiltshire. The revelation immediately shifted the direction of the royal investigation. If true, this was no longer a simple case of theft. It had become a matter between royals themselves. The questions spread like wildfire. Who took the jewelry from Kensington Palace? And why did the trail lead straight to the Queen's private estate? In the early hours of October 21st, as a cold fog blanketed Wiltshire, Ray Mill House, Queen Camilla's countryside retreat, became the epicenter of an unprecedented royal operation. The long, winding road leading to the property was sealed off before dawn. A fleet of unmarked black vehicles moved in formation, headlights cutting across dew-covered lawns and glinting off the silent windows. Inside the cars sat royal protection officers clad in bulletproof vests, earpieces fitted, their faces stern and expressionless. They had been given one concise but weighty order: search every inch of the property. No information leaves this perimeter. This command did not come from routine palace security. A senior Buckingham Palace insider later revealed that the directive had originated from a very high level, specifically from one of 2 figures with direct authority over the royal guard, Prince William himself, or one of the king's personal advisors. The identity of the issuer remains undisclosed, but the scale of the operation spoke for itself. This was no ordinary inspection. By then, the clock had just passed 4 a.m. Not a single light was on inside the estate. Ray Mill House had always been Camilla's refuge, a sanctuary where she could escape the pressures of palace life, surrounded by silence and countryside calm. But that serenity was about to be shattered. As the first car stopped at the gate, the on-site security exchanged a brief, uncertain glance before being ordered to unlock immediately. "By order of Buckingham," one officer said firmly. Queen Camilla was not home at the time. She was in London, at Clarence House, attending a private dinner with close friends. But her absence didn't slow the raid. If anything, it appeared to have been timed deliberately to avoid direct confrontation with any royal figure. The household staff at Ray Mill House were instructed to cooperate fully. Each was separated for questioning about their assigned duties. One elderly butler later recounted that he had never witnessed anything like it in all his years of royal service. Everyone was trembling. No one dared ask why. We only knew this was a top-secret operation. Inside the mansion, the air grew heavy with tension. Every footstep echoed against the wooden floors. The guards split into teams, combing through rooms with a checklist in hand. Nothing was left untouched, from the library and sitting rooms to the kitchen and wine cellar. Flashlights swept across shelves, under furniture, into the smallest gaps between walls. Officers exchanged quiet, clipped updates through their earpieces. East drawing room, clear, proceeding to the wine cellar. No signs of disturbance on the second floor. Outside, the wind howled through the old oak trees. The first pale light of dawn crept through the window panes, glinting faintly off the black uniforms of the royal guards. They worked in complete silence, moving in perfect coordination, as if every motion had been rehearsed long before. Near the window stood a royal aide, his hands tightly clasped. He knew that any mistake tonight could spark the biggest scandal of King Charles III's reign. The search had gone on for more than an hour when a young officer stopped in front of an old wine cellar, a part of the house rarely visited. The heavy wooden door was slightly ajar. As his flashlight swept across the room, dust shimmered in the air. Rows of vintage bottles lined the shelves neatly. But what caught his attention wasn't the wine. It was a large wooden cabinet tucked away in the deepest corner. The cabinet was locked, yet its hinges looked recently replaced. He signaled to his team and carefully unlocked it with specialized tools. The door creaked open. Inside, hidden behind a false panel of wine bottles, they found an old wooden box, neatly wrapped in dark blue velvet. No labels, no markings, just a small box, but one that made the entire team freeze. The commanding officer raised his hand, signaling everyone to stop. A thick silence filled the cellar. The ticking of the wall clock suddenly sounded deafening. When the box was opened, the flashlight beams caught a shimmer of light, a diamond necklace, a pair of earrings, and a ring, all identical to the set shown in the confidential Kensington Palace security files. Princess Catherine's jewelry. Every diamond matched perfectly with the records. Even the faint scent of her perfume lingering on the velvet lining. That same delicate fragrance, familiar to anyone who had seen her at royal events. One officer couldn't hide his shock. He murmured under his breath, "Impossible. How could it be here?" No one responded. They all knew this discovery would change everything for the royal family. The box was sealed immediately. A detailed report was drafted. Time, location, and the name of the finder, all recorded. Every detail was classified. The guards left Ray Mill House in silence, carrying the box as undeniable proof. The black vehicles rolled one by one down the misty road, leaving behind a mansion wrapped in an eerie stillness. After they departed, a few staff members remained frozen, still in disbelief. A young woman who managed the wine cellar later confessed that when she saw the box being taken away, she almost stopped breathing. "I'd seen it once before," she said. "Someone delivered it, told me it was an antique gift, to be kept safe because it held historical value. But who that person was, she refused to say. The royal raid was never officially acknowledged. Yet within 24 hours, news had leaked. A royal correspondent posted a cryptic message. "A significant discovery in Wiltshire this morning has shaken Buckingham Palace." That single sentence was enough to send international media into a frenzy. What exactly was happening inside the British monarchy? Meanwhile, at Kensington Palace, Princess Catherine received a brief message. "The jewelry has been found." She stayed silent for a long time before quietly replying, "I want to know why." At Clarence House, when Queen Camilla received the first report, she was reportedly stunned. She denied any knowledge of the box's existence, suggesting it might be a misunderstanding or a deliberate setup. But the matter had already slipped beyond her control. Once the evidence was brought back to Buckingham Palace, any explanation seemed fragile at best. That morning, the sun slowly rose over the Wiltshire countryside. Its light struck the windows of Ray Mill House, casting a cold, silvery glow, as chilling as the silence now hanging over the royal family. Because this discovery was not merely about a lost treasure being found. It was a warning, awing, a sign that a long-buried secret had begun to surface, and that the cracks within the monarchy's ancient walls were finally showing under the light of dawn. The question was no longer who took the jewelry, but why it had surfaced in a place where only one person had unrestricted access: Queen Camilla. If finding the missing jewels brought the royals a moment of relief, one palace source whispered, Then where they were found left everyone speechless. Because that room wasn't just a hiding place, it was the symbol of power belonging to the very woman who once made Diana crumble. When the black Range Rover pulled up at the gates of Ray Mill House, dawn had not yet broken through the thin mist that blanketed Wiltshire. The car door opened, and Camilla stepped out, her face pale with a mixture of anger and humiliation. The once serene country estate she called the safest place in all of England now bore the cold, unmistakable traces of a royal raid. The front door was still sealed, the antique wine cabinet marked with red tape, and the air hung heavy with the tension of what had just taken place. The staff bowed their heads in silence as she passed. No one dared to meet her eyes. An elderly butler finally spoke, his voice trembling. "Your Majesty, they arrived around 4 in the morning. They said they had orders from above." That was the final straw. Camilla spun around, her eyes blazing. "From above? Who exactly is above?" she snapped. But no one answered. Everyone in the room knew there were only two people who could have issued such an order: King Charles or Prince William. In the sitting room, Camilla sank into a chair, her hands trembling. She wasn't just furious about the search itself, she felt betrayed. After all these years, she had believed she was no longer an outsider, that she had earned her place at the very heart of the monarchy. And yet, the house that had once been her refuge back when Charles was still Prince of Wales had now turned into a scene of investigation. A close advisor later revealed that Camilla was barely able to contain her emotions. "I have been humiliated," she said, her voice breaking. "They stormed into my home as if I were a criminal. And all this over one item that might have been sent here by mistake." Indeed, that was her explanation, that Catherine's jewelry set had been accidentally delivered by a household staff member. But the excuse, though plausible on the surface, only fueled more suspicion. Ray Mill House was not the sort of place where servants could freely send or receive items, especially those originating from the royal collection. An insider later told the press that Camilla had long harbored unspoken tensions with Catherine. Though never openly hostile, her unease often surfaced in subtle ways at public engagements. Catherine, with her grace, composure, and effortless charm, embodied the very image of the queen the public had always dreamed of. Camilla, despite her title, still carried the shadow of her past, the scandals, the years of being branded the other woman. That was why the discovery of Catherine's jewelry at Ray Mill House wasn't seen as a simple case of misplaced property. It was a silent accusation, a warning sign of cracks within a family that had long pretended to be at peace. Camilla immediately tried to reach Charles, but the phone rang only a few times before going dead. The king, then at Sandringham, reportedly did not wish to discuss the matter over the phone. William, for his part, remained completely silent. The two men who mattered most to her, one her husband, the other his son, had both chosen not to stand by her. That's what angered her the most, a former palace staffer confided. Not the search itself, but their silence. That silence hurt more than any accusation ever could. That evening, Camilla shut the doors of Ray Mill House and refused all calls and interview requests. Through her spokesperson, she released a brief statement. "Any misunderstanding will soon be cleared up. I have full faith in my own integrity and in His Majesty's trust." Yet, even in print, the words sounded strained. Everyone knew that once trust was broken within the royal family, it was rarely restored. Whispers began to spread across royal circles. Some insisted it was all a coincidence, but many believed Camilla had overstepped her boundaries in recent months. She had interfered in palace affairs, clashed subtly with Catherine during receptions, and even, some claimed, accidentally overshadowed the princess during a memorial for Diana. A senior royal guard who took part in the operation later disclosed that the order had come from very high up and that no one dared to delay it. That revelation only deepened the conviction that this was no simple misunderstanding between two women, but a sign of a much larger, quieter war, a battle of influence between the queen of today and the queen of tomorrow. And if William had indeed been involved in the decision, it marked a devastating fracture in his relationship with Camilla. Since Catherine's emotional reappearance after her treatment, she had been embraced by the public as the monarchy's symbol of rebirth. Camilla, though crowned, now seemed increasingly adrift in a world that was moving on without her. That night, at Ray Mill House, Camilla sat motionless before the fireplace, a glass of wine gone cold in her hand. She gazed at the portrait on the wall, a photograph of her and Charles in the gardens of Highgrove on their wedding day. A bitter smile touched her lips. Everything she had fought for, everything she had sacrificed to obtain, now seemed to be quietly crumbling away in the silence. Somewhere else, inside Kensington Palace, Catherine remained silent. No statements, no reproaches, just the faint glow from her window, still lit deep into the night, casting its reflection over the small garden below, the same spot where Diana once stood, speaking softly to her two young sons. What had begun as a simple case of a missing piece of jewelry had now evolved into something far more dangerous, a test of trust, the most fragile currency in the royal world. And perhaps, in that world, it is not diamonds that are most easily lost, but faith between those who share the same bloodline. A week after the raid on Ray Mill House, just as the public began to think the storm had passed, a shocking revelation reignited the fire. A former servant who once worked at Ray Mill House came forward. In an interview with The Observer, he claimed that the wooden box containing the Princess of Wales's jewels had never belonged to Camilla. It had been delivered only days before the search. And the most chilling part? The person who brought the box, he said, was from the palace. That single sentence was like a spark tossed into a powder keg. If true, then someone within the royal family had deliberately set a trap for Camilla. Or perhaps the opposite was true, a carefully crafted cover story to erase the traces of an even deeper conspiracy. From that moment, the issue ceased to be about a missing jewelry box. It became a test of loyalty, a quiet but ruthless game of power among people bound not just by crowns and titles, but by fear and manipulation. The British press pounced immediately. Major outlets, The Times, The Telegraph, Daily Mail, all ran stories with suggestive headlines. Was Queen Camilla set up? Diana's jewels? Or the key to a palace secret? The headlines only fueled the fire, splitting the public into two fiercely opposing camps. The first theory, and the one that dominated public discourse, claimed that Camilla was involved. Many believed she had kept the jewelry not for its material worth, but for its symbolic power. The set had once belonged to Princess Diana, the woman Charles had loved, betrayed, and could never quite escape in the eyes of the public. To possess something of Diana's was, to some, a sign that Camilla wanted to reclaim what Diana once had. Those who supported this theory argued that Camilla had long been haunted by Diana's shadow. In countless photographs, her gaze toward Catherine, often seen as the second Diana, carried a strange blend of admiration and envy. To them, the jewels ending up in Camilla's private home could not have been coincidence. It was a manifestation of her desire to control the narrative, to own the past, a subconscious but powerful assertion of dominance. But a second theory painted a very different picture, one of palace intrigue. According to this version, Camilla was not the perpetrator, but the victim. Someone within the royal household had deliberately planted the jewelry at Ray Mill House, only to leak the information later, prompting the royal guards to act. The goal, to make Camilla appear untrustworthy, eroding the king's confidence in her while bolstering support for Catherine, whose public image had become almost untouchable. Royal protocol expert Evelyn Thorpe remarked, "If the raid truly came from a very high level, then it's clear this was never just about missing jewels. Someone wanted to send a message, and the intended recipient was unmistakably Camilla." Meanwhile, the press began to dig deeper into the uneasy relationship between the two most powerful women in Britain. Articles resurfaced old footage of Camilla and Catherine at public events, standing side by side, yet barely acknowledging one another. One video from last year's memorial for Diana went viral again, showing Camilla looking visibly unsettled as the crowd erupted in cheers for Catherine. Online, the debate grew vicious. Supporters of Catherine called it karma. They insisted Camilla's past had finally caught up with her, that the jewels of Diana appearing in her home was simply fate reclaiming what was once lost. One viral comment read, "Nothing is ever lost in the royal family, only hidden, until the truth decides it's time to return." Camilla's defenders, however, saw it as a calculated takedown. They argued that Catherine and William, though silent, commanded a powerful media network, and that this was all part of a broader image war between two generations of royals. As one Guardian columnist put it, Camilla is being hunted just as Diana once was. The only difference now is that the threat doesn't come from outside the palace. It comes from within. Amid the chaos, Camilla chose silence. She withdrew to Mill House, canceled all public engagements, and issued only a brief statement. "I trust that time will reveal the truth." But her calm only invited more speculation. The quieter she remained, the louder the whispers grew. Investigative reporters soon uncovered another detail. Around the same time the jewelry box arrived at Mill, a royal vehicle had departed Kensington Palace, off the official schedule. The discovery deepened suspicions that the entire ordeal had been orchestrated, yet the identities of the driver and the courier remained an impenetrable secret. Through it all, Catherine maintained her signature composure. She appeared at small charity events, smiling softly, saying nothing. Her silence, as one commentator put it, was the sharpest blade of all, for in the royal family, words aren't always needed to force someone to retreat. Those close to King Charles said he was torn. On one side stood the wife who had weathered decades of storms beside him. On the other, the daughter-in-law he deeply respected and admired. Any decision he made could fracture the family further. For now, the king had chosen to wait, to let the truth come to light. But within the palace walls, everyone knew that his hesitation only made the air heavier, and the silence far more dangerous. From what seemed like a simple case of a missing item, the story has now become the epicenter of international media attention. Many commentators have compared the incident to Diana's revenge dress moment in 1994, a small event that shook the very image of the royal family. And this time, the storm is swirling around the two women who hold the highest titles in the realm, Queen Camilla and Princess Catherine. Was Camilla truly set up, or did she fall into the trap of her own jealousy and thirst for power? The question remains unanswered. But one thing is certain: from the very moment that wooden box was opened, the British monarchy was no longer the same. Amid the rumors, the speculation, and the photographs scrutinized frame by frame, perhaps only those within the palace know the real truth. Yet they, like the institution itself, have long learned to live with secrets. In that world, truth is not proclaimed, it's whispered behind ancient walls, where power and suspicion walk hand in hand. As the palace scrambled to contain the flames of public outrage, one man could no longer stay silent: Prince William. In the days when British newspapers were flooded with stories about the mysterious wooden box linked to Queen Camilla, the atmosphere inside the royal residence grew stifling. Advisors moved hurriedly in and out. Staff were asked to re-sign confidentiality agreements, while the press counted down the hours to an official royal statement. Amid this chaos, William, known for his composure and restraint, made a rare move. He spoke up. He ordered all documents related to the incident to be sealed. He told the palace's media team that no one, not the press, not anyone inside the palace, is allowed to discuss this any further. His firmness took many by surprise. Until now, William had always maintained silence on internal matters. But this time he refused to stand aside, because the person most deeply wounded was none other than his wife, Princess Catherine. A close insider revealed that William personally went to see his father, King Charles III, on a somber afternoon at Clarence House. The meeting lasted just over an hour, but witnesses described the air as cold and heavy. William demanded transparency, a full investigation into the origin of the wooden box and the true role of those involved. Catherine has suffered enough, father, he said, his voice calm, but his eyes burning with anger. King Charles did not respond immediately. He simply looked at his son for a long moment before giving a slow nod, as if weighing something far greater than a scandal. The only reply William received was, "Everything will be handled the way the royal family always has." That calm response only deepened William's unease. He knew his father was a man who valued the monarchy's image above all else, which meant the truth could easily be buried if it threatened the crown's reputation. Meanwhile, Camilla, at the center of the storm, chose silence. She abruptly canceled several public appearances, citing health reasons. Photographs later surfaced showing the queen secluded in her garden at Mill, her face drawn, her gaze avoiding the cameras. Yet to the media, her silence spoke volumes. The more she stayed hidden, the more suspicion grew. Inside the palace, distrust began to spread like wildfire. Some of the king's advisors whispered about a curious coincidence. Why had the wooden box been delivered to Camilla's home precisely when she was away? Who had ordered the royal guards to transport it? And more importantly, how had the information leaked so quickly to the press? A former royal aide, speaking anonymously to The Observer, remarked, "Nothing in the royal family happens by accident. If there's a coincidence, it's a deliberate one." That single remark poured fuel on the fire. One faction within the palace believed this was an orchestrated move to discredit Camilla, to weaken her standing and diminish her influence over the king. But others suspected she was not entirely innocent, that she might have known exactly what the box contained, yet chose silence because it touched something far more dangerous: Diana's legacy. The woman William revered above all. Caught between these opposing views, the royal family now stands on the edge of its most fragile moment since the tragedy of 1997. William, meanwhile, found himself under crushing pressure. He was caught between two generations, torn between loyalty to his father and love for his wife. Every move he made was dissected by the press. Every word he uttered had the potential to shake the palace walls. Catherine remained silent, but those close to her said she broke down in tears when she learned that the wooden box had been found at Mill. To her, it was not just an object, but a symbol, a link to a mother-in-law she had never met, yet deeply respected. And this incident reopened the wound that had never truly healed, a wound that had only deepened through months of illness and relentless pressure. The British media began asking, is there a silent war brewing between Camilla and Catherine, one that will never truly end? That question quickly made its way onto the front pages of nearly every major paper. Public opinion split in two. Some believed Catherine deserved protection, that this was justice, not only for her, but for Diana and the years of betrayal she endured. Others insisted that Camilla was the victim of a calculated scheme, that someone inside the palace had crafted this entire story to bring her down. As the commentary spread like wildfire, Prince William stood firm. He instructed Kensington Palace to issue no public statements and ordered his legal team to trace every possible source of the leaks. His spokesperson said briefly, "The prince's only wish is to protect his family." But behind closed doors, the situation was far more complicated. Rumors began circulating that William had started to suspect certain figures close to his father. A former royal advisor who once served under Queen Elizabeth II revealed, "William senses something isn't right. He believes someone within King Charles's inner circle is manipulating the media." Some even claimed that the appearance of the wooden box itself was a warning, a reminder to William that he was not yet powerful enough to control everything. That night at Windsor Castle, the light in William's study burned late into the night. He pored over every report, every security memo, before stopping to gaze at a framed photograph of his mother, Princess Diana. Those who know him say he whispered softly, "Mom, I won't let them hurt anyone else." No one can confirm if those words were ever truly spoken, but even the thought of it was enough to leave Britain silent. This was no longer just a media scandal. It had become a test of loyalty, of love, and of the monarchy's honor itself. Amid the rumors and deadly silences, William chose action, while Charles chose patience And between the two most powerful men in the kingdom, Camilla, once known only as the Shadow, began to realize that this time, the darkness might consume her. Then came a chilling warning from a palace insider to the Daily Mirror. The storm has only just begun. The price of silence is always higher than the cost of truth. The matter eventually faded into silence, but the door to the secrets of trust, power, and legacy remained wide open. And when trust begins to fracture, what can possibly hold them together? Yes, the jewels were found, but the bigger question, who truly orchestrated it all, remains unanswered. In a palace where every move is measured, silence can often speak louder than words. The royal family seemed eager to fold this turbulent chapter away, as if there had been no raid, no suspicion, no missing treasure. Yet truth, no matter how carefully hidden, always leaves a trace, not in the vault, but in the heart. Among the glittering diamonds, there are cracks invisible to the eye. They reflect the dazzling light of power, yet expose the fragility of trust. The royal family may preserve their perfect facade before the public, but within, the wounds of doubt and betrayal continue to fester. Catherine still wears her gentle smile, but behind her eyes lies a quiet ache. Camilla carries on her duties as queen, though every step she takes is now more cautious than ever. And King Charles, the man standing between two women, knows that his crown feels heavier than it ever has. Three women, Diana, Camilla, and Catherine, like three chapters of the same book. Diana, the symbol of love and tragedy. Camilla, once branded the other woman, now holding the highest power. And Catherine, once seen as the perfect image of a modern queen, now caught in the same web of suspicion, where trust has become the rarest luxury. Perhaps peace was never meant for this family. Each generation must face its own trial. Between affection and duty, between truth and illusion, diamonds can be polished to shine again. But trust, once cracked, is almost impossible to mend. In a world where every glance is scrutinized, the greatest loss is not material. It is the loss of faith. And within those ancient palace walls, that loss may have just happened once more. As the morning bells echo through the quiet air, one question lingers. Can the British monarchy maintain its fragile balance between honor and trust? Or will the cracks one day spread all the way to the throne itself?